Not.
Well, good evening and welcome to this edition of the Island Stat Sports Show. I'm your host, Earl Baston. Joining me as co-host, Juggling J. Jason Ford. We are joined by the president of the Bermuda Football Association, Mr. Mark Wade. And of course, we're going to be talking about returning to sports, returning to football. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussions around how, why, what it all will look like. And of course, Mr. Wade, you had a meeting with the Department of Youth, Sport, and Recreation on Saturday. Obviously, your executive have met, and you've now met with the clubs. So, where do we stand? I know the premier last week indicated that football was given the approval to return on the 23rd. Uh, uh, so where do we stand as of October 13th?
Okay. Well, first, hey, good evening. Sorry. Good evening, everybody. Yeah. Well, first of all, I think there should be some clarity. We know the premier is very supportive of football and sport in general, but his remarks should have said that all sports will be given or moving to phase four on October the 23rd, not just football. Um, So certainly that was while pleasing that football was singled out. I think it was definitely all sports. The other thing is we are just still waiting for sort of written approval and what those conditions will look like. We have verbal sort of indication, but we are looking for written approval and also, as you know, with large group exemptions, those also have to be gazetted. So that hasn't been done yet, but we're anticipating that to be done in short order. Um, so obviously, following the announcement, we had an emergency executive council meeting. I was able to jump on the call with that Maceo here with all the NSGBs and then reconvene with our clubs because we met with the clubs on the Tuesday and then we met with them again right after as well. So the where we are now is that the minister had actually asked for team training to be suspended during the time that sports moved on to stage one, if you recall.
Yeah.
So basically, a lot of the teams did comply with that. Some did, go to stage one type training, which was 20 people, physically distanced, no contact. Some did in terms of trying to keep their players active, but the vast majority did suspend team training. So now, following the announcement on Friday, we're talking about trying to ramp training back up in order to prepare to play full tilt on October the 23rd. So, based on the advice from the team trainers and physiotherapists, that's a recipe for injury. To just ask teams to just go from no training into training and 2 weeks later competitive matches. So the clubs collectively asked us to delay a week. So we're now looking at October the 30th to start the Premier first and youth for us is 13 through 17. Um, so that's what we're working towards now. Um, Obviously, all of our clubs are going to have some challenges with the antigen testing, and certainly cost is one of them. And also, just figuring out how to administer those and how to be comfortable with what's being termed as the honor system, where somebody who's test themselves, and if they're positive, they stay away from training. and games, and go ahead and get a PCR test, etc., etc., and follow all the guidelines on there. So we have that element to it where we're asking us to be trusting that everyone's going to follow those guidelines. So some clubs do have some challenges with that as well. So that's where we stand as far as children's football, which is 11 through 7. We're gearing for them to start on November the 6th, as well as women's football. So there's a sort of ramp up where clubs are getting used to the testing protocols, and also getting refamiliarizing with the match day protocols that we instituted some time ago. But they obviously have to reacquaint themselves to that, because we're almost a year without competitive football, so they are going to have to reacquaint themselves to all the match day protocols and the things that they need to do for that. So that's kind of where we sit at the moment. We're still having some discussions with the government. We're still looking for some answers to some of the questions that we've put to them. So yeah, it's there's some light at the end of the tunnel, but there's some obstacles on the tracks. How's that?
You're using flashlights. You're using flashlights. Before I let Jay ask a question, was one of the questions, why are we now changing from what we were at before in testing the athletes at once every 28 days to now testing everyday competition?
Yeah, certainly that's one of them, because that's in addition to, and it's not or. So that's more that's something more that's left on the clubs and the national sports garden, but there's not just football. So that's one of the questions as well. One of the proposals that we put through to Youth and Sport was that we did rapid testing 2 hours before the match, and which is something that we're prepared to do as far as football is concerned. But then we see that there is an additional bunch of testing that's required as well. So that's certainly one of the questions.
Okay, Jay.
Well, President, I mean, no pun intended, but these goalposts keep moving, so we've got to go with it. But I'm glad to hear that the thought of the player, because I've always heard more of the community about what the actual player to play the game. The time we see what's happening now in European football, with the amount of games these guys are playing, trying to fulfill all these commitments, and then all these muscle injuries. And I mean, so I'm thinking, first of all, before I even get to talk about the testing side of it, but first of all, what are these guys can actually play for? What is the competition or competitions? Because obviously, before any player starts, they want to know what they can win. So first of all, is short term.
What's on the table, right?
Yeah, they want to know. They want bragging rights, because obviously last year is probably a lot, left, on the table from last year. Who really got bragging rights,
Right. Yeah. So basically, the league is a priority, and so there won't be Friendship and Shield over the Christmas period. That's going to be league football. And what competitions is doing now is just trying to find windows midweek in the second half of the season to play those Shield and Friendship games, which should be doable as long as we don't have a whole lot of rainouts, and we need those night time slots to play makeup games. So it should be doable, because you imagine that the Friendship is just 3 rounds, right, before we get to a final, and the Shield is very similar. So it's we're only talking about 3 rounds of matches that we have to fit into into week play, along with the FA Cup. So definitely the FA Cup, definitely the league, and we're just trying to see if we can fit the Shield and Friendship in.
Now, playing devil's advocate, because we're in COVID, and I know you're not the chairman of the competitions committee, but let's talk about the elephant in the room. If we have two teams that can't field a team on the day, how many free weekends in the schedule or proposed schedule that you got that you may be able to do some makeup games or makeup rounds in case two teams do test positive on the day and they can't field a team?
Sure. So what's been built into the schedule is rain days during the week. And right now it's just built around Somerset and BAA as night venues. As you know, we have the project going on at PAC, so we're anticipating that we'll have PAC online as well. So we'll have 3 night venues to be able to slot those matches in. And included in our large group exemption is there's nights that could be used for rain days as well. And one of the things that I did want to mention too is that we're going to institute the 5 substitution rule as well, in another effort to kind of take care of the player and manage the fatigue. So that's also been already approved, and that's something that we're going to implement.
One-off thing, or would it be something they're looking to team?
Right, you know how these things go. It's one-off right now, but we'll see what FIFA does with it. Because they did give leeway to do it. I know the Premier League hasn't continued with it, but we're going to continue, and we'll see what FIFA does with it going forward.
What about the late transfer? Because obviously that usually comes around the second week of November, and some teams would have already had 4 or 5 games in before that window opens up. Where do we stand with that?
All right, so sounds like you guys have been sneaking in our meetings. So, but
you'll find my listening device at some point in time.
But yeah, that question was certainly raised, and originally when we thought we might get started on October the 23rd, we thought we wouldn't move the window. So we're gonna just reconsider whether or not to move the window or just leave it where it is. At the end of the day, we're just waiting to see what competitions recommends to us. We do have the views of the clubs, and with the executive, we'll probably consider that next week Wednesday when we have our monthly meeting.
Mm-hmm. Before we take a quick commercial break, when Saturday during the conversation, because obviously it's all the sports in the room, and I'm pretty sure you got your earful about the fact that football got this mention from the Premier, and we don't know what to do, but
yeah.
What was the general consensus from the entire body about where we stand with these new restrictions or new advisories coming out from not only the youth in sport but the health department?
Well, I don't want to speak for all of them, and to be honest, I think David Subir, who's the president of the National Sports Governing Bodies Association, will be in a better position to speak. But you can imagine that the same concerns that our clubs have is some of the similar concerns that other NSGBs have.
All right. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll talk more with the president of the Bermuda Football Association, Mark Wade. We'll be right back.
John Barrett & Son, Bermuda's leading distributor of fine beverages, have brought us something fresh and exciting this month. Mystic Juices, skillfully blended for captivating flavor and loaded with nutritional value. Mystic Juices not only taste remarkably good, one serving will supply an abundance of vitamins A and C, more than the certified measure needed to meet your daily requirements. This month we're featuring delicious and nutritious Mystic Juices in an enticing range of flavors in 64 and 16-ounce bottles. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
My inspiration to write this book has to do with empowering. I want people to understand what it looks like when you are in a position when you don't have the tools around you. If you know me or don't know me, the game, the beautiful game of football, soccer, is and always was a way out. still fearful on what to do, what would happen if I say something.
What can we do in this book to incorporate tools to help specifically our group of young people in Bermuda?
Could you imagine doing a read with little people and breaking everything down for them and having them to have a voice and having conversation pieces, if it's chapter by chapter?
Welcome back. Mr. Wade, we have international competitions coming up. We have all these commitments coming up. How does that fit into the schedule of that you kind of got to work with right now? Because obviously some teams will be missing players, and time away from club, and as Jason already alluded to, that's more football for some players who then they start picking up these injuries. So where do we stand as far as the international commitments in the next, say, 5 months?
Sure. So it's actually not as acute as it could be. We have our under 17 girls, under 20 boys, under 20 girls, and senior women who have competition in the next 5 months. The under 20 boys will depart early November to go to DR. As you know, the under 20 girls moved on into the final round, so they're in the first quarter. The under 17 girls are in the first quarter next year, and of course, the senior women's commitment was delayed. The first 2 games were delayed till February next year. So it's it is going to be challenging for our women, in that some of the girls that play in both under 20 and senior women. I think there's even an under 17 in there in the senior team as well. So that's going to be a bit challenging in terms of just navigating through COVID and time away from school and work and those sort of things. So that's going to be challenging. Thankfully, CONCACAF has moved the Nations League from March to June. So that's may work in our favor as well, which is another good thing. So in terms of international competition, doesn't look like it's going to be too much of a conflict. We'll try and sneak in some friendlies for the women, at least one before they embark on their World Cup campaign.
Okay.
I just want to bring it back home just a quick second, because there's a couple of spokes of the wheel we haven't talked about.
Sure.
One would be the referees and the officials, as far as testing and how would that go about on game day, and also the fans. We hear there'll be a lot actually exemption for the large group exemptions for fans, but will it be a safety event? Because most of those large group exemptions there are requiring safety events. So just try and touch those 2 bases.
Sure. So in terms of the match officials, everybody that's in what we call the sporting bubble will need to be tested. So that's the referees, match commissioner. They all need to be tested, and staff as well. So they all need to be tested. And we'll try and maintain that sporting bubble just to be safe. All the people that aren't wearing a mask, we're trying to keep them safe as possible. So that's in terms of the sporting bubble. In terms of what was the other one?
Fans.
In terms of fans, it'd be similar to where we were before, where we're limited in capacity. So one ground, I think it was low as 150, and then some of the bigger grounds I think were up to about 350. And of course, the National Sports Center, I think, is at 50% capacity, which will be 2,000 people. So that's where the if we're in what's a phase 4B, that's where the capacity, spectator capacity will be, and yes, it will be safety. That's the law right now, unless come the week of the October the 23rd, there's some change in the law. we're hopeful that we can get more fans, obviously. But we'll see, what if any change in the law happens then. Because remember, we still have a curfew that's going on as well. So at some point, there's got to be some change, right?
Mhm. We remember back when we were playing, some clubs struggled with the commitments of making the requirements of game day stuff due to lack of resources of sorts. You guys did come up with a plan to play some of the matches at the National Sports Center. I know that was kind of cup stuff, but has there been any thought of possibly with the clubs who may struggle with resources, trying to put all that stuff together or put the clubs together and try to play at the one location of the stadium?
Yeah, well, not in one location of the stadium, because we did discuss that as well with the club presidents. And what we're going to do is maximize double headers. So and that should be a great help in terms of referees moving from one venue to the other, in terms of all the resources that you have for a match, instead of having to do it in two venues. You're gonna have to do that one. So we are going to maximize double headers, and that should be a really big help. We'll see how, whether or not we need to bring the National Sports Center into play. I don't think we will, but we'll obviously keep a close eye on it, and if we have to change, then we'll do that.
Because we noted that, of course, throughout the cricket season, some teams were never playing at home, and if they did, the first game was kind of just thrown in there as a double header. So obviously, there's always those. I wouldn't say just naysayers, but the people that just don't agree with when I say people, you have met with the club president, so obviously somebody's not gonna like the idea because you're never 100%. But how have you guys managed to kind of navigate that to try to convince clubs that it's probably the best thing for now to move in this direction?
Well, I think, to be honest, I think the idea of maximizing double headers was fairly well received. We didn't receive any sort of negative comment, not yet anyway. I think the overriding thing, I believe, is that everybody understands that it's temporary, and they may be happy with to go with that for this season. But obviously, next season they're going to look to be playing at home. So I think there's a lot of patience and tolerance right now. The other overriding thing is that we want the players to get on the field to play and play, right. So I think the presidents are looking to be accommodating in that sense, and obviously they don't want it to go on for too long.
Jay?
Yeah.
Okay, since you brought up double headers, I love the trying to get everything done in one location, but I'm just thinking off the top of my head some questions, and I saw that over even the cricket season. Timing of games, because if you've got basically transition of teams, as you know, with a lot of these health and safety protocols, things have to be wiped down, and there's only 2 changing rooms. So, I mean, to facilitate 4 teams, especially in a changeover. So the times of the games is going to be very tight for that the first game ending and to start, let's say, for instance, starting at 3 o'clock and the second game started. Will we see changes of times?
If you just remember from the last time we played, we did have a buffer between games where the sanitation was able to be done, and I think we managed that pretty well. So we'll just look to do that again.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know some venues are probably a lot easier than others, but obviously you guys had a test run already.
Yeah, it's about a 45-minute gap.
Yeah,
or at least 35.
Yeah, I mean, we might even be able to, depending on how well clubs do, we might even be able to close that gap a little bit. And then, of course, if the weather cooperates, it makes it a lot easier if one team just decides I'm not using the changing room, right? So that also came into play and in the previous season. when a team just didn't use the changing room at all. So you didn't have to clean the changing room, just had to quickly wipe down the bench. So there are some nuances in there that we can take advantage of.
Mm. Well, Mr. President, I want to thank you very much for your time. Obviously, there's still more to be discussed with the clubs, with the ministry, with the health department, and hopefully all that gets ironed out and possibly come the 30th, we will hear a whistle blow and a ball drop. How's that?
Yeah, I might just put on a jersey myself.
Now, listen, let me just say, the last president that tried to play football while he was the president, they took him off the field, or took him off a BAA field on a stretcher.
Yes, my mentor. That's true.
That's true. That's right.
Hopefully I'm in a little better shape than he was.
Well, we all saw the picture, so we know the end result.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. We're going to take another commercial break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Keith De Silva, the president of the Bermuda Hockey Federation. We'll be right back.
The use of butter goes back millennia, and its exalted status in the cooking world and in so many kitchens is undeniable. Around 3,000 years ago, ghee, or clarified butter, was developed in India and is the cooking oil of choice in many regions of the subcontinent, and compared to butter has a higher smoke point, reduced dairy solids, and a more robust, nuanced flavor. And to Organic Valley, creators of a certified organic version of this versatile traditional staple. This month we're featuring Organic Valley Ghee Clarified Butter. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
My inspiration to write this book has to do with empowering. I want people to understand what it looks like when you are in a position when you don't have the tools around you. If you know me or don't know me, the beautiful game of football, soccer, is and always was a way out. Still fearful on what to do, what would happen if I say something.
What can we do in this book to incorporate tools to help specifically our group of young people in Bermuda?
Could you imagine doing a read with little people and breaking everything down for them and having them to have a voice and having conversation pieces, if it's chapter by chapter?
And welcome back. Good evening, Mr. De Silva. Welcome to the Islandstadt Sports Show. Obviously, we just finished a conversation with the president of the Bermuda Football Association, who runs a contact sport, and you would probably have similar challenges of getting your sport up and running because it is as well a contact sport. But where do you stand, or where does your sport stand currently with the return to sports saga?
Saga is the right word for it. I feel like we're ongoing with this. As you know, Thursday night we all got emails with the return to we went from phase 1 to phase 3 overnight, and then I think everyone went into a bit of a panic mode because the weekend showed up and we're like, well, what do we do now? So yeah, I mean, I told my group, I said, stage 3 allows us to go back to training. So we can go back to training, we can get on the field. And we started to do that with the kids. I think our Saturday program is going to start this Saturday. We've got some of the adults going back, some of the older kids are going back. We haven't started games yet because, as you know, we're still limited to 20. I know very little sports, especially, football, you need more than 20 people with officials and volunteers just to get off the ground. I mean, 25, I think we'll be okay. I think football needs, I heard 50 just for a game. But yeah, there's a cusp. So we haven't started our games yet. And people there's still concerns. You've got Youth and Sport and Ministry of Health saying one thing. If you want to go back to sports, if you're vaccinated, that's fine. If you're PCR tested, it's fine. If you're lateral flow testing in school, it's fine. But if you want to do what they call a competition, you have to, it's more rigorous. So, for me, I'm like, what's a competition? Is it a national level competition? Is it friendly between people who are in your club? So that's where the stage we're at now is. At the moment, if I want to have a game, I've got to do a special permit. I have to do one of the special permits in order to have a game.
Mm.
So,
I'm kind of stuck with you. I want to ask, would they allow you to get the exemption if you gave them all your dates? Would they give you exemption for all your dates? One time?
I don't know. It's the difficulty. The difficulty we have in sports is that a lot of it is very fluid. Coming from another tack, I deal with a lot. We at one point dealt with a lot of running races, as right? And even with cycling, when I was timing cycling events, somebody might show up an hour before and decide, oh, I'm feeling pretty good, I'm going to cycle, or I'm going to run, or I'm going to go play football. So if I gave them all exemptions to say you all need to be tested, you all need to be either vaccinated or whatever the criteria is prior, and then half of them decide they don't want to show up, and then I've got a special permit for something that I need to move the day because we've decided that the day doesn't work for us. How is that all gonna work? We need a blanket. It needs to be a blanket statement, and I think President of football beforehand would probably say the same thing. If everyone came to an agreement and said, "This is how your sport looks." As an individual sport, not as an overall sport body, like sports on Bermuda, because every sport's different. This is how it looks. What's your risk? Well, how risky are you as a sport? Can we just move on and you get a blanket statement as an individual sport and say, field hockey can do this. They can do 25 people, if they do A, B, and C, and then leave it. Don't change it, because I know what's going to happen in November, December time. Somebody's going to turn around and change it. And then we'll be back to square one again.
Jay?
Hey, welcome to the show once again.
Hey.
This feels like deja vu. Well, I'm just thinking regarding, when we talk about football and a few of these other sports, they have these cup competitions. Not that familiar so much with hockey as how long the season is. And I was only thinking of the sense, if something does go wrong, how flexible you are within your season? How long is your season been? Have you made availability if something was to happen? Can you postpone? Can you stretch out your season? How flexible are you with the scheduling for your league?
Our schedule used to, in the good old days, I would say, because how I feel we should be saying it, right? In the good old days, we would run mid-September through to about Easter, and then that's it. We're done. It's a relatively short. We play Friday night and Sundays. Sunday mornings was the original set, and if it got rained out, we tacked it on to the end of the season, and we kind of played it as best we can. But as the weather gets hotter and activities, people don't want to come out to sport. They'll rather go out on the boat or the beach. So we start to lose. It does trail off near the end. So the sooner we could have started, the sooner we could have gotten on with what we needed to do. So, and that's how I feel. It's sort of like I'm waiting on somebody to make a decision or do something, and I'm constantly waiting. And I'm like, Earl, me. I mean, if I want something done, I'll just go and do it because I need to get it done because I think it just needs to be done. So now I'm waiting on this person and this person and this person who are trying to make a decision on a sport they probably don't know anything about.
When you guys were meeting, obviously you want to be handled collectively and individually because you all have different requirements.
Yes.
How did that go over with the Department of Youth, Sport and Recreation and the Health Ministry? Because I think the whole, I wouldn't say the hold up, but the confusion comes is that medical people are making decisions on sports that they probably have no clue on how it actually operates with numbers.
If you're referring to a meeting this week, and I missed it, but if you think about the medical profession, and this is, I don't have a problem with what they're saying, because they're basically saying, if you're in close contact with somebody within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, then there's a higher risk. Now, if you look at all the sports, there are very few sports that have that contingent of being that close for that long of a period of time. Rugby might be an exception because you're in a scrum. You know, you could be in there for quite a few minutes, right? Cycling,
not 15.
Yeah, not 15 minutes, right? And cycling, you're not even near anybody, right? Even with field hockey, technically, physical contact is disallowed. You're not supposed to have physical contact, but you're running next to somebody for, if a minute, you'd be lucky.
Yes.
You're not that fit.
I could think of one sport that is close contact for a 15-minute because the set lasts that long, and that's squash. You're in a room, you know what I mean? So that actually could last a 15-minute period. But they can actually stop the game, take a break, and they could make all sorts of rules within the game itself. But if you primarily look at it, all the outdoor sports, although there is some close proximity, you're never close to someone for a 15-minute period. Because if you are, your coach is taking you off, because that means you're standing next to the opponent.
Or you're not playing. You're just sitting there watching, right? So put somebody else on. And I think we had that conversation as a group recently. I was talking to a peer of mine, and you're right. Indoor versus outdoor is your primary factor, right? If you're an outdoor sport, you should be given a lot more leeway, right? You're out in the fresh air, whatever. Then you start narrowing it down. You say, okay, so indoors, say squash and basketball. You mentioned squash. You're in a 15 by 8 foot room or something? It's a really tiny glass box.
Yes.
And there's two of you, right? And you're right. Those sets could go on for a while, and it's a lot of work. Then you got basketball. Basketball's in a very big arena with 10 people, right? You might be close, but you're constantly moving up and down the court. And so the risk on basketball is a lot less than the risk on squash. So do you weigh each sport out? And this is where I think we're missing it as a community, is the collaboration between, the Department of Health can say one thing, and if you take that as gospel, that it's 15 minutes, 6 feet apart, and you say, okay, do we fit in that guideline? No. Okay, well, what's the next level, right? The next level is we need separation. We have separation. We are less than 15 minutes. We're outdoors. How close are we constantly being next to each other? And then as a sport, you sit there and say, oh, you've got a really low risk sport. Okay, well, how do we deal with that so that you, as a Department of Health, you're satisfied that we can go on and play, right? Football probably, I think the last case is the guys who went away because they probably went out and socialized is probably where they picked it up and not on the field, right? So even locally, if you had, Rangers and Cougars playing against each other, they're probably not going to catch it on the field. It'll either be the party they have afterwards, or on the weekend after they finish football, they're going to somebody's house. And that's where all that stuff happens. It's never on the field, right? So I think people have to, I understand the concern about the hospitals, the concern about the overwhelming fact that we're struggling, right? But where's our risk? Is our risk lower? Can we manage without that? As you know, we've got these, especially our children, our kids are struggling mentally because we've been out of sport for so long, and we get back in for a week, and then they pull the rug out from us, and then they're like, well, why are you doing this? No one tested positive in sport. Oh, we're panicking. Okay, I get that, but set some propaganda, and nobody's talking to each other. I don't think Ministry of Health and Ministry of Youth and Sport are talking to each other. And if they are, they're not saying the same thing.
But they all are saying the same thing. No, right now.
Yeah, no. But if I wanted to go down to BA Field and hire the pitch out and put 20 guys on a field and it's a friendly, as long as I've only got 20, what does it matter?
Right.
It's not sanctioned, so it's not an NSGB event. Yet, as a friendly, I can do what I want, but as an NSGB, I got to get tested. I got to get this restrictions. So why are we being treated differently than the public? Because we're a national body. So, are we held accountable? Are we held on a higher plateau than the rest of the general public? You can go down. down by House India, the basketball court is always ram full of kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, they should be out playing, enjoying themselves. But nobody goes out and says, "Are you tested? Are you vaccinated? Are you, So,
yeah. Jay,
you can hear the frustration.
I don't want to keep going down this road of doom and gloom because we could be here forever doing that, right?
We could, yeah.
Switch gears a bit. You're the president. I'm a parent. I have a young one, and I want them to get involved in hockey. Tell me why you, as a president, think that hockey is the sport that I want my young person being, and especially during these times, and how you can say, "Now you got my kid. How safe my kid will be in your environment, in your hands."
Well, I mean, so right now for us, we're keeping it under our guideline of 20, right? The field is huge. I mean, it's a big field, and we have the opportunity to split groups into smaller groups of 10 per half or 12 per half. So I mean, there is huge separations. Now, with kids see people they know, they go and hang out. Exactly. I mean, hey, how you doing? And they sit next to each other and they talk to each other. But they're doing that in school. They're doing that outside of school, right? I know that most of the kids nowadays, the private schools are doing it sooner than the public schools, but the public schools are also going to be doing this lateral flow testing. So there is some sort of testing regime happening. The 12 plus kids, majority of those kids are probably going to be vaccinated, because if you look at the statistics of the island, most of them are going to be vaccinated. So there is safety in most sports. So we hand sanitize. We don't do temperature checks anymore because I don't think anybody's doing that anymore. But we do. There is that safety. Don't use other people's sticks. Don't use other people's mouth guards. Don't drink other people's water bottles. But these are things they're being told this in school. Your parents are telling them. Now the sports bodies are telling them. So all the kids are trying to be as safe as possible, but they just want to get on with life, and I think they should. And you can sit there as a parent and say, I'm worried about my kid, I'm worried about safety. And like, they're in school sitting in a classroom, even with the mask on, they're sitting in a classroom for 30 minutes next to somebody. They walk around the school, they're doing it all day long, and they're safe, right? We're outdoors, the breeze is happening, the sunshine's happening. It's, they're running around, they're constantly moving. They're rarely standing still talking to each other. And if they are, they probably know them from school. So, that risk is it's not like they're hanging out with somebody new or somebody they don't know. So it's, I'm confident that our sport and other sports will be a safe avenue relatively soon. We just need the powers higher to kind of let go and say, yeah, you're right, do it.
We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, obviously, Keith, you had a team preparing for international competition. We want to find out where that is, and as far as it going on, as well as hosting. You were planning to host an event as well. So when we come back, we'll talk about that. We'll be right back.
The use of butter goes back millennia, and its exalted status in the cooking world and in so many kitchens is undeniable. Around 3,000 years ago, ghee, or clarified butter, was developed in India and is the cooking oil of choice in many regions of the subcontinent, and compared to butter has a higher smoke point, reduced dairy solids, and a more robust, nuanced flavor. Enter Organic Valley, creators of a certified organic version of this versatile traditional staple. This month we're featuring Organic Valley Ghee Clarified Butter. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
My inspiration to write this book has to do with empowering. I want people to understand what it looks like when you are in a position when you don't have the tools around you. If you know me or don't know me, the beautiful game of football, soccer, is and always was a way out. Still fearful on what to do, what would happen if I say something.
What can we do in this book to incorporate tools to help specifically our group of young people in Bermuda?
Could you imagine doing a read with little people and breaking everything down for them and having them to have a voice and having conversation pieces, if it's chapter by chapter?
welcome back. Oh, Keith, before we went to break, I talked about the international side of it. You had a group of young ladies preparing to play in a qualifier that was scheduled for at the beginning of this year, then pushed down to the middle of this year. Where do these girls stand as far as any possibility of playing an international event competition as a qualifier? I think the qualifier was for Pan Am, right? CACs. Yeah.
Right. So I've just gotten off an email this week with Pan American Hockey Federation, and they still want us to host, and we've picked the date of April of next year. So it's a year, so we're a year plus, but we're still going to host.
Okay.
So we now have time to sort of regroup and get back on that page. Unfortunately, with COVID, everything has hit everyone. Our national coach and the club have gone their separate ways.
Mm-hmm.
So we are now again without a coach, national coach. So it is something I still want to get back. Obviously, one of my mandates is to get back into schools, and we need a full-time person to be able to do that. But the schools have to allow people in.
Right.
It's a huge knock-on, right? Ministry has to allow that. So as with everything, it's once again we're struggling, and of course it's funding is difficult because everyone's struggling, and it's we're gonna try to reform that team. I mean, the girls and the ladies were all training. They were training at one point, and then we had to take a hiatus, and then now we're back again. But now we need somebody to run it, and that's our next challenge.
Jay?
So
yeah, man.
Yeah. And it's that motivation again. That loss of motivation. Where okay, so now we have a target. Do you want to come back? And then, well, I'm not comfortable with coming back because of the high numbers, and then there's a lot to think about. So.
And that's where I'm going with that, because I'm even thinking we've noticed now. So with football, I know there's a contingency from FIFA to help out with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Does hockey have an international federation that can help some of these costs, because COVID is not cheap? It comes with a price tag.
Not that much money. That's the thing. I mean, if you look at what FIFA gives the football clubs here, it's astounding how much money they get. I mean, they're huge. I get it. For every one of our kids, they probably have 30. So they're big. They're big on the island. I get that, but I don't even know where the cost. We can apply for costs. We can apply for costs through the BOA. We can apply for costs through FIFA. It's just paperwork. But we have to have. We have a plan. We put a plan last year. It didn't happen because of COVID. And then they're like, well, we're going to take the money back. And so it's hard to plan because you don't know what's going to happen. We'll keep trying. The conversation we had just recently was about the lateral flow test. I mean, I got contacted by a local company who told me I think it was just under $7 a test. That's a big cost if I have to get everyone tested. And then I was on a call and somebody said, I can get at Lowe's $2.75. I'm like, so why are we being offered at $7? I'm like, where's this, and if the government's testing PCR testing everyone at probably $200-$300 a test, why can't I get a $3 test for free to get sports going?
So I think I've spoken with this in a couple other programs, Earl, but I just want to talk to you a little bit about Keith. Obviously, nowadays we're in this streaming world, where there's another avenue to try to another revenue stream. Has there been talks or even thoughts of even trying to stream a hockey game so you can get some sponsorship? Because that's some of the exposure that some of these sponsors will look at, and then it sort of limits, obviously, because a lot of the times you can't have X amount of people to your venue. Now you might be able to get a revenue stream in to offset some of these costs. So some of these talks have you guys had these talks? Or
some of these talks have happened. Digicel approached sports through Youth and Sport about filming all the games which obviously we haven't started, filming all the games, putting it on their Digicel Go app for a month, and then giving it to us. One of the questions raised by another national body was, "Are we going to get any money on this? Is it just for free?" No response. I actually went out and bought myself a camera that will, I don't know if I've shown you, or a little VO camera. It's a little green Dutch triangle that I can throw up on a tripod. It'll film the entire field, plug it into my network at home. It'll upload, do all its AI programming, stitch it together, and it'll follow the ball. And that was, but part of that is if I really planned it, I could throw advertising on the backside of the NSC by the player sitting area, big banners or whatever that I could sell as advertising. Again, we got to get back on the field. I got to get play time. So this will be, these are all strategies, but it's hard. Who wants to put money up for something like that, right? So.
Tell them you got a foreigner coming in, and that everybody seems to throw in money.
Yeah, I guess. So yeah, advertising. And I had this conversation. And it's a funny story. This was probably 15 years ago. I had a conversation with I can't remember who was running the radio station at one point. I don't think it was Kenny, but and I said, radio's dying, and he goes, no, it'll never die. I'm like, I don't even think the last time I listened to radio. No one's advertising on radio because I think the only people who advertise on radio is Lindo's. But if you went down the street and said, "Hey, where should I go shopping?" You said Lindo's, Miles, Marketplace, Supermarket. Advertising on this island is very specific. It's difficult because we're so small. Everyone knows everything, right? So as an advertiser, even as a product, I wouldn't advertise much because word of mouth spreads faster than advertising. And if you don't know by now, then you don't know. You're living under a rock, right? So, but again, Digicel, I'm hoping, if Digicel comes through, maybe they'll be up there. Bermuda Broadcasting had actually approached me. He was our luge. Who was our skeleton? Patrick Singleton, about filming as well. And then that never happened.
They didn't even cover sports on a weekly basis. Why? What?
Yeah.
So,
and I said that. I said, look, this camera didn't cost me much. Well, in the grand scheme, it didn't cost me much. The idea behind it is, even if I rented it out for a couple bucks to another club, they could throw it up, they could record it, and then all their members can watch the game. They can watch the practice. You can comment. There's a lot to it. It's a great product, but nobody's playing sports.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once we get back on the field, I did some testing with it with some practice games, and it's great. I mean, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do commentary. The next cameras they just released will do live streaming, but then I got to buy a plan with either one or Digicel. How much is that going to cost for data plans? And it's, it's not like the overseas where I can get them to do it for cents a gigabyte, right? So,
right.
But yeah, the advertising's always been there, but I just, it's how do you manage it? And obviously there are some challenges up at the field too, because it doesn't want to be, I've been told it doesn't want to be branded that we own it, even though we're the only ones on it.
Anyone that's there.
So, I don't know if you've seen the field, there's a great big corner wall with nothing on it. It'd be perfect little spot that says, welcome to the home of Bermuda hockey. All right. So sponsored by whatever.
Well, Keith, earlier we had the president of Bermuda Football on, and they've kind of put in a planned start date of October 30th. Have you gotten that far yet?
I told my board and my committee members that the date we were given was October 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
So if football's been told they can go ahead on October 23rd, then we should follow suit.
Right.
There is now obviously if the Premier and everyone else is saying the football can go back on the 23rd, that should lead to understand that perhaps the group size numbers are going to change because you can't do it with 20.
Right.
So I think every sport is looking at that going, well, if football is going to go back in, then we should be able to go back without special permission.
Right. They've pushed it back. They've pushed it back an extra week to allow teams to prepare. So I was just asking if you.
I'm not going to throw anybody under any sort of pressure, but I've said the 23rd, and it's now 10 days, and I've heard nothing. So, I'm still waiting for my, and the teams are gun shy too. One of the groups that play, so like, well, are we going to have a league? I don't want to put a team in and pay money if we're not going to have a league, and what are our restrictions? And if they've got to be vaccinated or tested, and I don't want to vaccinate and test, then I don't want to play, and that means we've got less teams playing, and then do we actually have a league? And it's untidy. It's just a mess. You can, like I said, Jason said, you can go down this road forever and ever and ever and never get to the end. So it is. We're back on the field in a limited capacity. Like I said, Monday night the kids are training. Tuesday night they're training. Thursday afternoon, Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon they're training. So the kids are out, and I think the kids are big, but the adults have other avenues to promote mental health. The kids don't. So the kids need to get out on the field, and I want to push the kids as much as possible to get them going. So whether we have to throw in some 5v5 games on half pitches just to get it going, I'll do it. Like you said, the law is one thing and the guidelines are something different. The law is group sizes of 20, and the guidelines are you got to test and do some X, Y, and Z's, right? So the law, I think we'll stick to the letter of the law. So we'll just have group sizes less than 20.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. We'll stay in touch to find out when we move into that next phase and when your league will actually get up and running. Because I know one of the things that you often talk about, and you've already expressed it, is the mental health side of things. Because if people are locked inside, the stress level goes up, and so many things run through people's minds, and then depression sets in. They're probably listening to us talk, and depression is setting in even further because of the unknowns. But hopefully, in the very near future, you get an answer, and then you can pass that answer on, and they can see some movement.
It's the restrictions. My last point: the restrictions in schools. Everyone's got to wear a mask. Restrictions at the offices. You go to a supermarket, you got to wear a mask. You go out for dinner. You either indoor or outdoors based on your condition. You have to do all this. Now you're saying that the recreation, in order to relieve all that stress, you're going to throw that on there as well. You've gotta let people breathe. You gotta let them relax. Gotta let them burn it off, and you'll end up with a better community, right? So, we all know this.
Definitely. We're going to take our final commercial break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up this edition of the Island Stat Sports Show.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Keith.
Bye.
John Barrett & Son, Bermuda's leading distributor of fine beverages, have brought us something fresh and exciting this month. Mystic Juices, skillfully blended for captivating flavor and loaded with nutritional value. Mystic Juices not only taste remarkably good, one serving will supply an abundance of vitamins A and C, more than the certified measure needed to meet your daily requirements. This month we're featuring delicious and nutritious Mystic Juices in an enticing range of flavors in 64 and 16-ounce bottles. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
My inspiration to write this book has to do with empowering. I want people to understand what it looks like when you are in a position when you don't have the tools around you. If you know me or don't know me, the beautiful game of football, soccer, is and always was a way out. I'm still fearful on what to do, what would happen if I say something.
What can we do in this book to incorporate tools to help specifically our group of young people in Bermuda?
Could you imagine doing a read with little people and breaking everything down for them and having them to have a voice and having conversation pieces, if it's chapter by chapter?
And welcome back, Jay. Before we go off, I want to congratulate Michael Sims, Kamiko Smith, Chaka De Silva, and Damian Paliande. They will join Brian Morris as the 5 local golfers who will take on the PGA Tour professionals at the Butterfield Bermuda Championship at the end of the month, as Michael Sims was the winner of the qualifier today, with Kamiko finishing second, Chaka third, and Damian finishing in fourth. So those 5 will be representing Bermuda at the Port Royal Golf Course come Championship Day 1.
Thank you for that, because this, man, you impressed me tonight. I got so many more questions, but they're all going on the same road. Hey, whatever happened to temperature checks? What, they don't work anymore?
The Duracell's ran out. The Duracell's ran out on them.
Because I know, going back to school, I'm again, there's temperature checks back in school. So, but everywhere else now, the guns stop working, or.
Well, if you go into the hospital, they have the camera that they do it there.
Right.
Yeah. Some places do have it. I'm trying to remember. I went in a place today and it has it. Yeah. Well, the hospital. I ran into Youth and Sport the other day.
So my
and
point
the hospital have an office in there. So
at one point in time, I won't say it was mandated, but it was, it was something.
Yes. Some. I think government offices still do it.
So when was it relaxed?
Sorry?
When was it relaxed? When did I miss the memo?
When the individual decided to relax it. Come on, at the start of it all, boss, I don't feel like doing this no more. Okay, I'll put it down.
So that goes back to, and I hate to say this, Earl, some of these breakouts, and I don't know the science behind a lot of this stuff, but I know some of these breakouts were blamed on the honor system.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna start blaming the honor system, well, then I don't know how we're gonna get back to anything, because there has to be that side of it that we're gonna have to trust one another, whatever way you look at it, because these restrictions, these protocols are costly, and most of these sporting organizers are not gonna be able to bear
any of the costs. Yeah. Well, hopefully next week we have a better night of talking.
I just think we're getting closer to sports being played, so I feel better. And the PGA is coming up, so I think we'll have some better news coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, trust me, the local sports will be up and running.
I'm telling you, I feel good, man. I feel good.
Local sports will be up and running before that. The Earn for Football, who are looking out for the betterment of the athletes and the officials and so forth by taking that extra week, and we can understand that. But I'm pretty sure everybody heard the 23rd for football and took it as a yes, okay, so the 23rd we can all start. And I'm pretty sure there's many sports that have put things in place to start that weekend. So
I tell you what I am shocked about, because we had Keith on maybe a year ago.
Close to that, yeah.
It was about a year ago.
Yeah.
And through that conversation, there was talk of the ministry, the health ministry, into each individual sport
Mm-hmm.
to talk about the high risk and whatever. And listening to Keith tonight,
never took place. Because sports is just lumped into one, and what's good for one, they declared good for all. But everybody's got different circumstances. So
we're not. I just say this earlier. We're 18 months in.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm still baffled why those specific talks haven't been had with each one body. I guess that's why you're here.
I don't know why you're baffled. You heard the same thing every week. you don't get an answer every week. You don't get this. You don't get that. You know,
the numbers are coming down, Mr. Biz, and the numbers are coming down.
Oh, trust me. They just released the numbers before this show started, and today's numbers were Sunday there were 3 positive out of 1,401, and Monday was 9 positive out of 1,748. So currently we have 474 active cases. There were 193 recoveries and 3 deaths from the last one. So the numbers are coming down. Unfortunately, we still have these folks who are losing loved ones. And we give them our condolences as well. But hopefully, sometime soon we'll hear, like I said, hear a whistle, hear a ball, hear people shouting and all the like.
Banter.
Yeah, because sports locally has returned. So let's hope, Jay, next week we could possibly see if we can get the minister to come back and give us the update. And I'm gonna try and see if we can twist the arm of the health minister as well, because obviously we see the health minister on these talks, but she's talking general stuff, and I think we need to get her to come on and talk sporting stuff, and hopefully we can get a better understanding, or she can get a better understanding that not every sport is the same, and things are different. Just like our cultures. I mean, remember we're a multicultural country, and what is good, or what the hypothetically the Portuguese community does, not necessarily does the Caribbean community do. You know what I mean? So it's 2 different flavors, and the same thing for Bermudians, and we have to look at it individually if we're going to move forward. So that's what I'm hoping.
I'll tell you, if you do get here, and I hope you remind me one of the main questions I really want to ask her: what is her ministry doing for the anxiety, depression, for our young ones?
Yeah, that's important.
As not only as a result of COVID, but also a lack of sports.
Yeah, activity.
What support the government is supplying to not only just the general public, but also these clubs. I think every club should have somebody going in and assess players, assess parents, assess everybody, because of what we're going through the last. So that'll be something that I'll be looking to see. What are they looking to support? How they can support with their resources? Because once again, clubs do not have these resources at all.
Well, I know you, and if you're anything like me, Alzheimer's is starting to kick in, so you better write that down right now.
Yeah, I got to put the time to my fingers. So.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Have a good night.
Why I got it on my finger there?
Why do I have the string? What? Have a good night, man.
All right, take care, buddy.